Boker Tov. We're going to start in a second. Good morning to everybody. All right. So just a little housekeeping, and then we'll start. So those that are a little newer to the class, I'd say we're in the middle of a text, but we're always in the middle of a text. So anybody who hasn't been here before, don't worry. You don't need to know anything prior, but we're actually technically finishing a section, hopefully today. And then we're going to take a couple weeks and study something, and then we're going to start with our Elul learning. There's going to be 3 opportunities to do Elul learning each week. My class is going to shift to pre-high holiday thoughts. Our Thursday lunchtime class, as Rabbi Marquise, who's been teaching the Talmud class, is they're expecting their first child. He's going to take a month and a half off from teaching that class, and we're going to do holiday-focused classes, leading pre-Rosh Hashanah, pre-Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot. And then also Thursday evenings, we're going to have classes. But publicity is forthcoming. Okay, having said all that intro, Boker Tov and good morning. We are going to study, and we are apparently in Emily's room with Lynn, and we're going to, I like that, you get to see everybody's spaces. Anyone want to read today? Anyone? I see Eric today. Okay. The cat.
אני קוראת רק בעברית.
Okay, and if we need a Hebrew reader, Ruth will be our Hebrew reader. Perfect. The cat did not, wait, the cat's tail is up. I don't know if the offering. Okay, now I see that. Okay, so just to sort of do a refresher, those that are here, wonderful to study together. We are finishing up Pirkei Avot, which is the ethics of the sages, the Mishnah's ethical teachings, and we are looking at chapter, in particular the last chapter, chapter 6, which potentially is a later addition to it, perhaps not from exactly 2,000 years ago. And in particular, we're looking at this really long teaching, which is split into 2 Mishnayot, which is 6:6 and 6:7, which are the 48 qualities necessary to acquire Torah. Right? And if you saw me, I put acquire Torah in quotation marks because we're not exactly sure what acquiring Torah means. We said it could mean a host of different things. It could mean how to become a rabbi. It could be how to become a Torah scholar, or it could just be how to dedicate your life to a life of Torah. And Torah sort of in the broader sense of being a committed Jew, or someone who follows our ways. So we've been going through these 48 different qualities, and we sort of keep getting stuck because it's really interesting, and we're spending a lot of time, and actually found some interesting things to bring today. So having said that, Eric, we're obviously not going to start from scratch. We're on the last third, and you know what? I realized I didn't open up the window, I don't think. Oh, it's already open from last week still, so okay. Didn't remove that window. So Eric, we're gonna open it up and share the screen. If you can see the page, we're on chapter 6, Mishnah 6 and 7 from Pirkei Avot, and we're going to, let me sort of find where we should pick up. These again are the 48 qualities of what it takes to be a Torah scholar, and I want to start with the who is loved. If you can see right here, who is loved?
Start there.
Yep.
Okay, who is loved? Who loves God? Who loves his fellow creatures? Who loves righteous ways? Who loves reproof? Who loves uprightness? Who keeps himself far from honors? Who does not let his heart become swelled on account of his learning? Who does not delight in giving legal decisions? Who shares in the bearing of a burden with his colleague?
I want to pause here. So this is like, I'm going to call this a section. By the way, this is a section that we really focused on last time. I want to just add a couple more thoughts in sort of processing and thinking about that. And perhaps you also, those that were in the class last week found also some interesting things. So just, this sort of talks about the love. Who is loved? Who loves God? Who loves one's fellow creatures, who love righteous ways, who loves reproof, who loves uprightness. Does this sound like anything? Sound familiar? Have you heard anything like this before? Any thoughts? Anything you've ever heard before that sounds like this? Has anyone heard page 12 at the bottom of the morning minyan? Hillel Omer. Hillel used to say that we should be like, that we should be like the disciples of Aaron, the high priest, right? That we should love, what is it, Ruth?
אוהב את הבריות ומקרבן לתורה.
Right? Well, Ohevet Abriot. What's the exact wording here? I got to scroll up a second to get there. Ohevet Abriot. Sound familiar?
ומקרבן לתורה.
Right? It sounds exactly familiar, right? It's like the exact same words, right? So there it says, right, that we should be a disciple of Aaron, the high priest, right? Ohevet. If it's okay with you, let me just pull it up so that we see it. Well, actually, I have the siddur here, so let me get the exact wording from the siddur, so I'm not making it up here.
יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהינו, שתיתן חלקנו בתורתך, ונהיה מתלמידיו של אהרון הכהן, אוהב שלום ורודף שלום, אוהב את הבריות ומקרבן לתורה.
Right, so one who loves, be a person who ohev shalom, loves peace, rodef shalom, chases after peace, pursues peace, ohev et abriot, right, loves all fellow creatures and draws them near to Torah. So did we get an ohev shalom yet? Did you read that? Yes, no, maybe. No, but what you don't see here, we didn't get there yet, is, Eric, you didn't read it yet? There's a phrase, Ma'amido aha shalom, which we'll get to. That's sort of in the next section I want to focus on. So I want to just say, we didn't say that, we said this for a few of them. A lot of these are quotes that we see in other contexts in rabbinic writing. Right? What Ruth just quoted for us is actually another Mishnah from Pirkei Avot, which has made its way into the Siddur in another place. That's Pirkei Avot, I think, chapter 2, if memory serves. Well, let me see if the note says where it's from. They don't give the source here, but yeah, pretty sure it's chapter 2. But it's Pirkei Avot anyway, right? So a lot of these teachings we find in other places that are sort of the rabbis gather, like the greatest qualities that a Torah scholar can show, right, is this. Ohev et abriot. Okay, so there seems to be a growth, right? A person who is beloved, I gotta get one, right? A person who is loved, a person who loves God, a person who loves fellow creatures, a person who loves righteous ways, a person who loves reproof, a person who loves uprightness. Is there a pattern? Like, why does it go from loving God to loving one's fellow creatures, which means sort of everything every person, animal, entity in the world, a person who loves righteous ways? Is that how you translate tzedakot? Is justice better? Comments? Thoughts?
Isn't tzedakot the same word as tzedakah?
The same word as tzedakah, yeah. I mean,
Other
I can tell you
translations?
my version says, another version says justice, you know. They translate, this version says righteous ways. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. By the way, Rashi's version of this mission does not have that phrase in there. Remember how we talked about there's different versions? And remember even like this version is different than the version I was using? This version meaning the one on Sefaria. Rashi does not have Ohev Tzedakot in Rashi's version, the classic Torah commentator and Talmud Mishnah commentator. Let me see how this version translates it. Yeah, who loves justice? Who loves justice? By the way, that's another famous phrase. Well, Ose Mishpat, it's a little different, but if you remember, the prophet Micha, boils down like what are Micah asks, what is the type of life that God asks us to follow?
I remember one, Hatznea Lechet.
Right, that last one is, right, to walk modestly in God's ways, right? Ose Mishpat. Now you're gonna make me remember that one. All right, let's pull it up. It's right. I'm pretty sure it's the last chapter of Micha. I'm gonna do this. Maybe not. I think it's at the end of chapter 3, if memory serves correct. No, I'm wrong. Let's see if it's at the end of the last chapter. No, I gotta Google that. I'll tell you in 1 minute. Oh, it's Micah 3:12. Where do we go? Micah. You can't see it now. I know I stopped the share. Sorry. No, it's not there either. We'll find it I'll get it for you. We'll find it. Okay. Getting back to the text. All right, Eric. Where were we? Let's go to Perkei Avot chapter 6. Ooh. Okay. So while we're here, let's sort of move on. So we talked about uprightness, who keeps oneself off from honors, who loves reproof. We talked about that last time. Who doesn't let one's heart become swollen on account of learning. We talked about that last time. Who does not delight in giving legal decisions. We sort of brushed over this one and focused on the next one. Any comments like why should this be an important quality that is a Torah quality, who does not delight in giving legal decisions?
I don't really get that one. Is that you're being proud or not humble? Because I would think that it's a good thing to be sharing your knowledge with other people.
Yeah, other thoughts?
Another translation says reluctance to hand down rulings. So maybe as opposed to saying this is what you will do, try to get whoever is in a dispute to resolve it themselves. Would help, but not by decree.
Mm-hmm.
No, someone that doesn't say this is what you will do, that kind of thing.
Other comments? So, and this sort of fits in, if you've ever heard Judge Polster, Dan Polster, he often, he's taught he teaches in the community, he's taught in our synagogue, he's taught at the Tikkun Leil Shavuot before, about really, being a judge and being Jewish and sort of how he approaches making decisions. And I think this really sort of talks to that he really does it with a lot of trepidation. So I'll give you a commentary. When a person is asked to render a decision, one should not feel happy or satisfied that they've reached such a level of recognition that people are coming to them as an authority. Rather, it should have, he doesn't say this, rather it should appear to them as if hell has opened before their feet. Wow, okay. When analyzing a law, a person must do so with fear and trepidation, to consider the case very carefully in order to avoid any error in their decisions. So I think it's an idea of the weight of responsibility that comes with making a judgment. And by the way, that might then go into the next one, which we talked about, which is sharing your burden with your colleague or with your friend, or I have to look at what the Hebrew word is there. Noseh bo'el im chavero, right? So it's interesting, right, that the next one, even though it's very different, right here, it's don't be happy with the opportunity to render a decision. The next one is carry the burden of your friend. I wanted to bring an interesting commentary I found about sharing the burden of your friend or your colleague. And this is from Rabbi Twersky's commentary. Okay, so this is what he says. Rabbi Yerucham Leibovitz devotes an entire essay to these 4 words. Noseh bo'el im chaviro, sharing your fellow's yoke. He states that this trait is not a derivative of a mitzvah of loving one's fellow person, but rather extends it, and it's the very basis upon which Torah and all of our commandments exist. And it's only fulfilled when a person feels another's pain as if it was their own. Rabbi Yerucham states he was once asked whether he has any idea how many times he turns from side to side when he sleeps. He thought the question was absurd. The inquirer stated that he had just visited a sick person who had to maintain one position, who was not allowed under medical advice not to turn from side to side. Rabbi Yerucham says he realized at that point that he had never properly fulfilled the mitzvah of visiting the sick. It did not occur to him to think of how limited a sick person may be in doing what everyone takes for granted. How great is the suffering of that sick person who can't do this, right? I did visit a sick person, but I was remiss in not sharing their suffering. He goes on to say that feeling the burden and suffering of another person underlines all the commandments that are commandments between a person and another human being. If you know, right, the commandments are divided into different categories, right? And this is mitzvot ben adam l'chaveiro. The degree with which our great Torah personalities identified with others and felt their pain is mind-boggling, right? So then he goes on and on to tell different stories, right? But the idea is that really the only way to live a Torah life, a life devoted to Torah, is to understand that you have to share other people's burdens. And if you've ever studied Musar, has anyone studied Musar here? Spiritual ethics, this is exactly what Rabbi Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement in the 1700s, is exactly this little teaching, these 4 words, was the basis of the entirety of Musar, which is that, you can't be a human being if you don't carry someone else's burden. Being a human being means that you share responsibility for caring for others. And that's what it means. We're in agreement? And that's obviously why we are so devoted to social justice, social action, right? Chesed, all of those things that we do, right? We're not a Jew without them. We're not a human being without them, without caring for other people. Okay. Right, who judges, scales weight and favor, who leads a person onto truth. Okay, what do you think? Pretty clear, right? Ma'amido al ha'emet. We talked about ma'amido last time, the idea of standing, right? Ma'amido al ha'emet, ma'amido al ha'shalom. What's the difference, right, between, right, leading a person or lifting up a person or standing up a person on truth as opposed to standing up a person on peace? I know we did not talk about this. What's the difference? And why are they grouped together? Right? This is exactly the same phrase. Mamido al hamet, mamido al shalom. Right? They translated here, who leads a person onto truth, who leads a person onto peace. Right? In my book here, another one says, brings a person to truth, brings a person to peace. Let's see how this book translates it. Establishes a person in truth, establishes a person in peace. Why are both necessary? And what does it mean?
No peace without truth.
Do people feel like they have their own truth?
Yes.
Do a lot of people claim to have the truth? Does it lead to peace? Or dafka the opposite?
After the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, we see that, especially in today's world, right?
You hear the expression "my truth" as opposed to "the truth."
Yeah, right. Truth has become such a loaded word now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a really hard word to sort of wrap your heads around with, right? What emet is, right? So, ma'amido al ha'emet. Do you like the fact that truth here is first, right? Establish someone in truth and then establish them in peace. Do you like that order? Well, let me give you a comment here, right? That if a discussion develops into an argument, right, one should remind their fellow and convince them that the search for truth must be motivated by peace. What do you think? Right? All this must be done in peace and friendship, not with insult. I know, don't we usually end with shalom? Isn't that like the thing we always say? Or say shalom is the last thing we say. Birkat Hamazon ends with shalom. You know, the Amidah ends with shalom, right? We always end with shalom. So it's good that, you know, in this listing, and these are like phrases, and right, that the first thing is that we should raise up a person to seek truth. We should raise up a person to seek peace, and peace is second. Okay. Where are we? Okay. Is that where we left off? Eric?
Let's see. Answers. Maybe a little bit before. We can
Before.
start with right after
Oh, wait, who
peace.
judges? Yeah. Whenever you said we left off, I'm
He
ready.
judges with the scale. We just talked about these scales weighted in his favor, who leads him on to truth, who leads him on to peace, who composes himself as his study, who asks and answers, who listens to others, self adds to his knowledge, who learns in order to teach, who learns in order to practice, who makes his teacher wiser, who is exact in what he has learned.
Okay, that's number 47. We're leaving the last one. You can't see it yet. Okay.
Yeah.
So by the way, we didn't say this again, but like again, this is sort of like the best of the greatest hits of the rabbis. Right? So like one of the greatest hits of the rabbis is right, who judges the scales weighed in his favor. If you remember from Pirkei Avot, chapter 1, right? There's this famous teaching that you should judge every person lachaf zechut, right? Judge every person favorably. If you remember that, actually, if I recall correctly, Shammai teaches that. right? Shammai teaches that. And again, this is like one of those best of, right? That we should be a person who judges people favorably, right? By the way, following the idea that we sort of care about everybody, and if they're suffering or whatever, we should help. We should reach out and help them in any way, right? We should lift them up on truth. We should raise them up on peace, right? Who composes himself at his study. What does that mean? Let me show you the Hebrew. It's not here. Mityashev libo betalmudo. I think we may have actually said this one last time. Settles his heart. Sorry, it's a his here. Not really, but a person settles their heart through study, composes themselves through study. Right? There's a sense that, right, through study, that sort of is able to settle ourselves. Have you guys found that ever in your lives? If you read and you know, that sort of settle things down, right? Displays a calm and regular rather than impulsive and sporadic disposition. I don't know. Do you agree? Well, you guys are learners, so
Translation I have says simply deliberation and study.
Okay, Hebrew speaker, what do you say? I think there's more to it. Mityashev is like is reflexive, right? Hitpa'el.
Yes.
Right. So a hitpa'el form of a verb means it's almost introspective already. It's like an action that we do upon ourselves. Am I right, Hebrew teachers?
Yeah.
Right. So it settles, right, sits in ourselves, right? Causes us to sit. Libo, in our heart, which remember we talked about libo could also mean mind or intellect, right? But talmudo in our studies. Shoel umoshev, right? So a person who acquires Torah is a person who asks and answers, right? So what does that mean? What does that require everyone to do, which they're not doing right now, by the way? Right?
Ask and answer, questioning.
Mm-hmm. Right? I would say to be engaged, right? To be engaged in learning and not simply like take it in, right? Not be passive, be an active learner. That's how I understand it. Right? Shoel Shoel umeshiv, right? Is really to be engaged, to be probing, right? To really be sort of focused on it. Other ideas, comments? Oh, I have a different version here. Ooh. This is not as cut and dry as ask and answer. This one version says, which is from the Torah Anthology version, Shoel ke'inyan umeshiv kahalacha. We ask about the point that is being discussed, umeshiv kahalacha, and we answer according to what the law decision is. So this was more, you know, how we were reading initially is a more generic idea about active learning and questioning and answering, right, and being engaged in discussion, right? This one particular version is really focused, sho'el ke'inyan, that we should ask to sort of get a deeper understanding of something. The dogs are good. They are asking a lot of questions at the moment. I think it started raining. Yeah, it started pouring again. They're not happy.
Yes, it's pouring.
Yeah, they're not happy at the moment, right? Umeshika halacha. right? It's not just a generic answer to get the discussion going, but that you're supposed to answer with what the specific answer is. Again, that's I only have it in one little version here, not in every. I'm looking at 6 versions at the same time. It's not in any of those other versions.
Well, the point of halakha usually, especially the Talmud, comes up with a lot of different takes, I guess, sometimes, and that
Hmm.
could provoke discussion and hopefully increase the level of knowledge, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, all of learning is about questioning and answering. Yeah. What about this? Shomea umosif. Listening and adding. How do they
Adding,
translate it here?
adding.
Right? Who listens to others. Right here. By the way, this translation is already giving you a commentary on it. This says who listens and adds. But then if you look in the brackets, they're adding to it, right? Who listens to others and themselves adds to their knowledge. I thought it was add to the discussion, right? I mean, that was my first blush. I'll give you a couple of commentaries here, right? Hearkens and adds, carefully sifting the opinions answered by others, right? One adds useful notes of his own to illustrate the subject at hand. Okay, maybe. I'm going to give you another one.
I'm going to show ale.
Yeah, please ask.
Is Mosif and Musaf the same root?
Yes.
So is there any connection there? Because Musaf is, I mean, it's the, I don't know.
Addition. Yeah, no, right. Just like Yosef. Yosef was the extra kid. Yeah, right. It means to add. 100% it means adding an addition. By the way, there's a halacha in the Torah. There's one of the mitzvot in the Torah is not to add to the Torah. We just read it. It's in either Devarim or Ve'etchanan. It's in the opening chapters of Deuteronomy.
Are you talking about not to go to the left or to the right?
Oh, that's the question.
Or are you talking about the don't add and don't subtract?
Don't add and don't subtract.
Because there's both, isn't there?
Yes.
What do you
And
mean?
then
What do you mean?
And then you bring in the fences that the rabbis put around everything, and to me that's adding.
of course there's adding. Shoshana, what was your question?
What do you said? Yosef means to add.
Because Yosef was an additional child, right? Yosef was on top of all the children that Jacob already had, right?
Well,
from Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah.
12 tribes. There's supposed to be 12 tribes, and he's 11, isn't he? Or
Well, he's actually number 10, if my numbers are right. But yeah, or number 11. You're right. He's number 11, and then Benjamin is 12. Yeah.
I mean, does the word Yosef mean? What does the word Yosef mean?
Extra.
Will add.
Will add. Thank you.
Add.
Really?
Will add. Right, because, well, really what it is because Yaakov didn't, now we're going to biblical story, right? Jacob didn't expect to have another child, right? Regardless of, Midrash that he already knew he was going to have 12, I don't know, right? But, right, he was overcome with joy at the addition of this son. And actually, usually the women, I have to look at him, but in those generations, the women actually named so actually this goes to the story, right? Rachel was barren.
Yeah.
Right, and didn't know she would, she didn't think that she would ever have a kid. The women actually named the children in these stories in the Torah. So she was overcome with the opportunity to give birth to a son, to add to the family. So that's why she named him Yosef. I know. Ruth is going to double check for us.
I thought it had something to do with what he did in Egypt of making the Pharaoh wealthier by adding all the property and all the during
could be. I'm not, again, different than I'm not going to give him a drachic future prognostication of what he was going to do in his lifetime, because Yitzchak certainly didn't bring laughter, in his lifetime, perhaps, except at his birth. I don't know if he was named for what somebody foresaw he was going to do. I see what you're saying, and that could be a midrash understanding. Right. So, for this was either about, and I'm going to get back to another commentary, listening and adding. Besides what a person hears from their master, you must also seek to study, review. By the way, shomea here, I think, means, that it's not that you hear what you're listening to the lecture, or you're listening to your teacher, or listening to discussion, because we already have that. That's the Q&A that was from the previous thing. Shomea here means that you actually study, because a traditional way of studying is to read something aloud to yourself or to your chavruta, to your partner. You didn't study silently. Once upon a time, if you remember, the Mishnah was oral. The Mishnah was spoken, right? So when you studied, you actually chanted it. You said it aloud. So Shemea here means that they were relearning it themselves, or relearning it with their partner, right? And then so it's Shomea umosif, right? That they were relearning and then increasing their own knowledge. Every time I hear myself say it over, I understand it better, I learn it better, I gain a new understanding. Do you understand that different interpretation of this phrase? I can't see a lot of people. I'll stop the share for a second. Do you guys understand that? Right? Have you ever learned, anyone here a Torah reader, right? When I learn Torah, right, the best way to learn my Torah reading is for me to actually hear myself do it, right? Or same thing like with the sermon. If I want to really practice my sermon, it's not just reading it. I actually have to hear myself say it, right? And then I can actually add to my understanding. I can improve it, right? Same thing with I can really improve my Torah reading by hearing myself. That is traditionally how Torah was studied, not Torah reading, right? But Mishnah and Torah. So that's a different way to look at this phrase of listening and adding, is that you actually went through the lecture, right? You go through your lecture notes, or go through whatever was studied, and you say it aloud again, and you have a new understanding. That's how you review. Okay, Ruth, did you find it yet? Not yet. Okay, we'll get back to you. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah, because we actually do have to end one of these days. Okay. Where were we? Who asks and answers, who listens to others and adds to his knowledge, who learns in order to teach, who learns in order to practice. All right, what about that? I mean, do we always learn in order to teach? Is that
Almost have
the
to.
live a Torah life?
You almost
You
have to.
What does that mean? Learn in order to teach. Is everybody expected to be a teacher, or is it the idea that we should be able to pass it on?
Probably to pass it on to our children.
All right, when one studies Torah, should there be their intention of teaching others to benefit the community? Right, not everyone is going to be a teacher, but the opportunity to help teach others. And there are things that even if we're not a teacher, there are things that we can share with others, right? Or give us a gift to others, right? That we can sort of become expert in to help other people.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
In Psalm 126, says that the dream's clear, and then we see reality, something like that. So that's why we learn, in order to clear the world, repair the world and get God to be the total king of the universe, and we don't want anyone else. We were supposed to do that in the first place, not get a king. And they wanted a king, so they got a king. But like,
Yeah, the king was not such a good idea.
no,
Yeah.
not a good idea.
Yeah, that actually might, what you're saying, Shoshana, might be a little bit closer to the second phrase that we're going to look at now, right? Which is, right, learning in order to practice, almanot la'asot, in order to practice, to do, right? It's like how to be a good person, how to be a good Jew, right? Which in the end is our belief that's going to sort of bring, we'll get to, the futuristic idea that if we do all that, then we're going to bring Messiah, right? When one studies Torah, it should be both with the intention of learning, right? So that we can observe them properly, so that we can live the best type of life. Does that make sense, right? It shouldn't just be an intellectual exercise, correct? It shouldn't be to be a teacher, and it shouldn't just be an intellectual exercise. Right? Like, so I have, when I teach conversion students, right, there's a lot of intellect involved. They have to make up for X many years of Hebrew school that they never had, right? And like, there's like a lot to learn, and there's only sort of so much I learn. It's very intellectual, and it's a lot of sort of one-on-one with me, right? Like, I'm teaching them the knowledge base of what it means to be a Jew, but there is so much more. And I tell all my conversion students that, like, this can't just be an intellectual exercise. It can't be like, I'm really interested in learning this. Good, I'm glad you're interested. That doesn't mean that you necessarily need to be a Jew then, right? It means that you're a learned person, right? And you want to like broaden your horizons, right? Right? You need to learn in order to live a Jewish life, right? To practice. And, I require my students to get engaged in community, right? And to do Jewish, not just to learn Jewish or even think Jewish, right? So I think that's sort of part of this. Other comments on that phrase, right? Learns in order to practice.
I think those two phrases go together.
100%. Yeah.
Because the best way to teach it is through example.
100%. Right. And that's this, if you remember, like, this is one of these classic rabbi questions, or like you've probably gone to this learning session before, is it better to learn or better to do, right? If you had half an hour, right? And you could do something Jewish or you could learn something Jewish, which one should you do? Right, if you remember when we talk about the 4 species for Sukkot, right, we say some are connected to learning and some are connected to action, and right, these things. Right, the answer is, really, the answer is both. The answer is both. Right, learning should be hand in hand with action, and action should be hand in hand with learning.
It kind of reminds me of Naaseh v'Nishma. You need to be doing what God is mentioning,
Perfect.
telling you.
I like that. Yes. Yeah. Good. Yeah, Ruth, you found it?
I did, yes. It's Breshit Lamed 30.
Yeah.
ותהר ותלד בן ותאמר אסף אלוהים את חרפתי בדץ נתעית ותקרא את שמו יוסף לאמור יוסף אדוני לי בן אחר. And she called his name Joseph, saying, the Lord add to me another son.
Perfect. As we said, right? This is actually a sign of gratitude, right? Joseph was named Yosef because Yosef means add, right? And Rachel named him that way because she felt such gratitude to God for, the gift of a son.
But she was hoping for another son.
Thank you for clarifying that, Ben.
Yes.
That's Benjamin.
Yeah.
I want another, right? Because this was the competition factor, correct? Potentially, is that bad to say? With the other wives?
What do you mean competition?
because Leah had 4 sons
Oh,
born to him, and Bilhah and Zilpah each had multiples, 3 sons each or something. I gotta do my math here. Yeah, I think they each had 3 sons.
No, it's 2
right,
each.
2 each. Yeah, whatever.
2
My
each.
math. I'm tired from the drive, but yeah. But she wanted to, measure up to the same standards, or at least get close to the other wives. She was feeling pretty low self-esteem potentially. Okay, let's finish. We got like 4 more to do, so we can finish. Okay. Okay. Hamachkim et rabo, which they translate here as
That's what we're doing.
yeah, you're 100%. Who makes their teacher wiser? Who makes their teacher wiser? Comments on that? Remember, this is right, the way we acquire Torah, right? To become a Torah scholar or engage in Torah is by making your teacher wiser. Yeah, Ruth, or whoever
There
wants
is a
this.
saying, Mikol melamdai hiskalti, but also our rabbi learns from us.
100%.
I think everybody benefits from discussion and from hearing other people's viewpoints.
100%.
What we're doing right now.
Yes. Other thoughts?
yes. Learning helps you love better, to love your children better. You don't want to make any mistakes with your children. And the more you know Torah and teach Torah to them, the better off they will be, the holier they'll be, the more high self-esteem they'll have, that type of thing.
Very nice. There's this famous quote another famous quote in the Talmud, which is this, which our rabbi said: "I learn much from my teachers. I learn more from my colleagues, but most of all, I learn from my own students." Right? Of course, the most, as you said, most exemplative is what just happened today, right? Like this is, and I always say, I play up our Starbucks Torah class, to potential new teachers, to say, it's like one of the best classes because, not because really the class teaches themselves, it's just like it's such an engaging discussion where everyone brings their own approach to the Torah portion. I always learn so much when I teach it. It's a lot of fun, even though I do a lot of prep and I barely use what I prepped because there's just great conversation, right? It's an interesting phrase. If you just look at the Hebrew itself, who wants to really translate this? Hamachkim et rabo, right? The one who makes their rabbi or teacher wiser, right? So I love that idea, right? Our goal should be making our teachers wiser, and this isn't a positive. This is not about identifying where a teacher made a mistake, right? This is not about correcting our teacher. This is about widening and growing our teacher's knowledge base so that it, in the end, teaches more people more things, right? Okay. Hamechaven et shmu'ato, who is exact in what they have learned. Is that how any Hebrew speakers, is that really how you would translate that phrase?
I don't know. Shmu'a is like not gossip, but what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah, pondering over what one learned. Mekaven usually means kavanah, right? That's the word kavanah, which
Yes.
is focused, right? Kavanah is intention, right? So one who has focus and intention over what one has heard. The power of focusing and directing all one's energy toward a specific point regarding Torah.
Okay, so I have a translation, a little difference. There's exactness in conveying a teaching.
Okay, like really trying to get the specifics
Trying
of what they learned from someone or what they studied.
this sounds like more conveyance than learning. It's more like conveyance to others.
Okay.
Make sure you're conveying it correctly.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying my best.
So this translation seems to be talking about learning. The other one I'm sitting on is talking about teaching.
You're saying the teacher versus
Yeah, this
the
says
learner.
who is exacting what he has learned. I think the implication is so that will be conveyed properly, but the other translation is more specific about the conveyance.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, I'm looking at my different things, and yeah, so this is like these say like that you should be taking notes. Everyone here should be taking notes, right? So that you can that we are really clear on what we have learned.
Mhm.
Interesting again, the progression is right. This is about sort of adding, these are all, a lot of this is about adding to the discussion, right? Sort of enhancing our learning, expanding the learning that happens, both individually in Chevruta, right? Personally, right? We're supposed to listen and sort of review, right? In order to learn more. And now almost the last one, number 46. Actually, that's 47. Number 47 is, right, mechavenet shmato, right? Really be precise and really focus with what we learn. Okay? And this is the last one. We made it. Ha'omer davar b'shem omro, which Eric hasn't read to us, so I'll let you read it to us. And who says?
Who says, oh, I muted. Okay, who is exact? Okay, and who says a thing in the name of him who said it. Thus you have learned. Everyone who says a thing in the name of him who said it brings deliverance into the world, as it is said. Esther told the king in Mordecai's name.
Okay. How would we say this in English? What would we say? Right? Who says a thing in the name of the one who said it? How would we say that in English? Don't plagiarize, right? Quote your source, right?
Give credit where
What's
credit, give
give
credit
credit where
is
credit
due.
is due, right?
Don't forget your bibliography.
Yeah, like it enhances their learning, right? When a person repeats another's teaching and gives its originator full credit, here you go, Shoshana. One brings redemption to the world, right? That has the power, right? Quoting, right? A teacher, right? Not passing it off as your own idea, has the opportunity of sort of bringing better things for the world.
I have one
So,
thing to say about,
yeah,
seems off subject, but it really isn't. The Starbucks logo is
yeah,
a woman holding two snakes and she's unclothed between them. Can you please
yeah.
see why Jews are accepting Starbucks?
I'm not. That's a great question. I think to me, it seemed based on some sort of goddess thing. I didn't know the exact source. I have to Google what the source is.
We can't accept Starbucks even though their coffee's great. You just can't.
Ah,
You can't do it. It's a
it's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, and some people, yeah. Yeah, should we be using a company which has a questionable, which says the logo? Yeah, I would say this is, I don't think, even though some people are very religious about their coffee, and I do have I have a closing statement I want to say, but I want to address this show. Even though people are very religious about their coffee, right? I think what you're getting to is this question is it avodah zarah? Is this idol worship by, using and,
sounds like
really, right. So number one, although some people may worship their morning coffee, I don't think that, our, whether you go to Starbucks, buy Starbucks, if, even what we call our Torah class Starbucks, right? In no way are we considering that the logo is some, elevating of a potentially idolatrous image.
Yeah,
And
but
no one's,
you look at it, you know what it is. And I mean, it's a
yeah.
serpent from the Garden of Eden. I mean,
Yeah.
rid of it.
Oh, well, maybe we'll get a good midrash in Parsha Bereshit about the origination of Starbucks. The first coffee farming happened by Adam and Chava. And that's why they stayed up all night and they were afraid, and Hashem had to make the sunrise in the morning. Yeah, I'm done. But no, it's a good question, right?
Well,
The short answer is that I don't think we consider it idolatry, avodah zarah, because it's just this image. I have a closing point. It's 11 o'clock. I have a closing point on this. I mean, it's actually from Rabbi Twersky, if it's okay. He writes something really interesting, right? We've read these 48 different, what he calls prerequisites for acquiring Torah, right? We're told that God gave the Torah in the desert, right, to indicate that just as no one has exclusive ownership of the desert, so too no one has exclusive possession of learning, right? So he says this, right? There is a sharp distinction between acquiring Torah knowledge and other bodies of knowledge. Torah requires to have proper character traits, right? What we really read were these 48 different character traits, which are usually called midot or midas if you're in an Ashkenazi yeshiva world, right? These are 48 different characteristics, right? Ways that we are supposed to live, right? What we're really talking about is how to learn, right? In order to be a learned person, right, you have to have these 48 qualities. A person's genealogy, social status, right, doesn't really matter about this. It's one's qualities, right? This is very different than any other type of learning. I mean, I don't know, like when you sign up for a class at Tri-C, do they ask you, are you a person who honors every human being? Do they ask you, or, if you sign up for, if you're gonna, take even a class at B'nai Yeshurim, right? Do we have like a prerequisite that you've, fulfilled these 48 things in order to learn with us? That you have to be a person who's committed to sharing other people's burdens or elevating, someone, that you're going to be a person who's going to question and answer, that you're going to review the material afterwards to expand your knowledge, right? That you're going to be a person who loves to be reproved. Remember, like all these 48 qualities, really interesting, right? Like, shouldn't you just be able to learn in order to learn? So what does this Mishnah really mean? What do you think? This is the 11 o'clock into the session question that we should have started.
I think they're goals to aspire to.
Is this like the ideal learner?
Right.
The ideal human being, right? Again, right? If Torah is the ideal and we're supposed to be engaged in Torah all of our lives, right? And this should be the ideal that we're studying Torah, right? It makes sense that we should have these 48 qualities to aspire to. If we had time. And actually, as I said, I found this really interesting artistic thing, so we'll probably do a little bit next time. Like the next thing to do, which we didn't do, and it's 11:03, is like, can we rank them? Like, are there like more important ones? Maybe we'll do like a Google poll and stuff where we can do a little ranking next time, a little interactive. So thank you for learning with me. Maybe we'll do a little summary next week, and then Elul learn. Have a good week. My doggies are saying goodbye to everybody.
Very nice.
Bye, doggies.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.